The cavern was quiet except for the soft, labored breaths of the great albino dragon. Her scales shone like frost under the pale light filtering through the cracks above, but even that light could not hide the deep cracks spreading across her body. She lay on the cold stone floor, her wings folded tightly around her, trembling as if the weight of the world pressed upon her. Her eyes, usually bright and piercing, were dull, clouded with pain that even her strongest kin could not heal. The other dragons circled at a distance. They were tall, sharp, and fearsome, dragons who had ruled the skies of many worlds. Yet here in this cavern they looked helpless. Their claws scraped the stone in frustration. Their tails thumped the floor in anger. They had no answer, no medicine, no magic strong enough to reach her. The young hatchling, barely bigger than a human, stayed close to his mother. His white scales were soft and shiny, still free from the harsh marks of battle or life. He chirped softly, nudging her side with his tiny snout. But she did not stir except for a shallow lift of her head. He hissed softly, a sound of fear and confusion, for he did not understand what was happening. Humans were not meant to be here. The galaxy had long known that dragons ruled the skies, ruled the planets, and ruled with a power humans could only dream of. But a human technician had been brought here months ago, sent by a distant human colony to maintain the machines that monitored the planet. He was small, thin, and unarmed, with no scales or claws, no fire in his breath. The dragons barely noticed him. He was nothing more than a shadow to them, an observer with weak arms and weak thoughts. Yet he was here now, kneeling quietly near the edge of the cavern, watching. He had seen the dragon mother struggle for hours, and something inside him stirred. Humans were not strong in the same way dragons were. They could not fly, breathe fire, or tear a tree apart with their jaws. But they had curiosity, they had cleverness, and they had courage that did not always show itself. The dragon mother coughed, a wet, painful sound that echoed through the cavern. The elders of her kind hissed in alarm. They moved closer, their bodies tense, scales bristling, but they did not touch her. No claw, no fire, no magic could remove the burning pain inside her chest. The human noticed it. The way her skin glowed unnaturally, the faint shimmer that flickered like a dying star beneath her scales. It was not illness, he realized, not a natural weakness. It was something else, something older, something left behind by ancient weapons that humans had only read about in history logs. Radiation. The dragon's body was rejecting it, fighting it, but it was stronger than her. He swallowed. His heart thumped fast. Any dragon could kill him with a single thought. They could see his weakness, his fragile body. And yet he could not look away. He had a plan, or at least the beginning of one. "Step back," hissed one of the elder dragons, its voice like rolling thunder. "Do not touch her. You are human. You understand nothing." "I know," the human said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "But I might be able to help." The elders turned their glowing eyes toward him. A human helping a dragon? Impossible. They hissed, curling their wings, shifting their massive bodies closer to guard the mother. The hatchling growled, small but fierce, standing near the human as if sensing some strange truth. The mother's breathing became jagged. Her tail twitched involuntarily. The light in her eyes flickered as if she were already slipping into the dark. The human knelt closer. He touched the edge of one broken machine nearby, then the faint glow of a crystal embedded in the cavern wall. He was connecting wires, pressing his palms against cold metal, murmuring to himself. He worked quietly with careful, precise movements. Dragons had never seen this kind of thinking. Dragons had never needed it. The hatchling watched him. Something in the human's calm, steady presence made the hatchling feel less afraid. For the first time, the tiny dragon chirped a sound that was not fear but curiosity. Minutes passed like hours. The mother groaned softly, her chest rising and falling unevenly. The elders whispered among themselves. They did not understand the human's tools, his movements, or the way he measured the light in the crystals. They did not understand that humans could see patterns that dragons could not, think in ways that dragons had no reason to consider. The human's face glistened with sweat. His hands shook as he pressed one final wire into place. A soft hum filled the cavern, barely audible but strong enough to make the scales on the dragon's backs tingle. A strange warmth began to radiate, not like fire but like sunlight filtered through ice. The dragon mother shivered. She opened her eyes slightly, blinking at the human. Her gaze was weak but focused. It was as if she understood that this small, fragile creature was not a threat, that he meant something she had never known before. The elders hissed and moved back, unsure, tense. The human did not flinch. He held his position, hands resting lightly on the crystal device, staring at the dragon mother as if willing her to live. The hatchling pressed closer to the human, his tiny body trembling, but his eyes wide and trusting. For the first time the mother's breathing slowed. The light in her scales seemed to steady, flickering less like a dying star and more like a sunrise. The human whispered to himself, more to focus than to speak, "Hold on. You can make it. I will not let this end here." The cavern was still, except for the slow hum of the crystal and the mother's soft breaths. Outside, dragons waited, unsure what to do. Inside, a human risked everything for a creature that could crush him without thought. And for the first time, the galaxy seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see if the impossible could happen. The light in the cavern grew just a little stronger. It touched the mother's scales and lingered there. The mother moved her head slightly toward the human. The hatchling chirped in relief. The elders watched in disbelief. And the human continued his careful work, knowing that everything depended on what he did next. The cavern had grown quiet, but the tension remained thick, like a heavy fog pressing against the scales of the dragons. The albino mother stirred slightly, her breath still uneven, but steadier than before. The human technician stayed close, his hands hovering over the crystal device, adjusting wires and humming softly under his breath. He did not know the language of dragons, but somehow his presence seemed to calm the hatchling. The elder dragons exchanged uneasy glances. They were proud, strong, and experienced in ways humans could never understand. Yet they could not see what the human saw. To them, the mother's struggle was simple pain. To the human it was more complicated. Something invisible, something ancient, was eating at her from inside. He had studied old star maps and forgotten battlefields before he ever came here. He knew about the weapons that once littered the galaxy, left by creatures long gone. Some of these weapons had been simple. Some had been powerful enough to destroy whole worlds. And some left traces that lingered even after centuries. This was one of them. The albino mother's body was reacting to a radiation that no dragon could sense fully. They felt the pain, yes, but they could not trace it, measure it, or understand its origin. The human's mind worked quickly. He connected the readings from the crystal device to the faint energy signatures in the cavern walls. He saw patterns, waves, and pulses that the dragons could not see. Every pulse of light, every flicker in the cavern, told him where the dangerous energy was concentrated. He traced it carefully, marking a path in his mind. "Stay calm," he whispered to himself, though he knew the dragons could hear. His voice was soft, steady. "I can fix this." The hatchling chirped nervously. It sniffed the air around him as if testing whether he was friend or foe. The human reached out slowly, letting the hatchling nuzzle his hand. The tiny dragon squeaked in surprise but did not pull away. This bond, however small, gave the human hope. If he could reach the mother, he might be able to do something the dragons could not. One elder dragon stepped closer, wings flaring slightly, a low growl rumbling in its chest. "Human, step back," it warned. "You know nothing of her power. You cannot help her." "I know enough," the human said calmly. "I can see what you cannot. If I do nothing, she will die." The dragons recoiled slightly. Pride and fear battled in their eyes. No human had ever dared speak to them this way. Most humans would have cowered, but this one did not. He was fragile, yes, and small, but there was a strange strength in him that the dragons could not measure. The human placed his hands on the crystal again, aligning it with the faint shimmer of dangerous energy that twisted through the cavern. He could feel it like a hot, sharp pressure under his palms. It was unlike anything he had felt before. His body tensed, but he forced himself to stay calm. The albino mother twitched, her claws scraping against the stone floor. Her eyes flicked toward the human, wide and unsteady, as if she were trying to understand what he was doing. For the first time, the dragons noticed that she was not fighting him but almost trusting him. It was confusing. Dragons did not trust humans. They never had. Minutes passed slowly. The human adjusted wires and crystals, aligning energy patterns with careful precision. He moved closer to the mother, letting the hatchling stay between them. He could see the invisible currents moving through her body, pulsing like dangerous rivers of light. They were small, weak currents, but even these were enough to kill her if left unchecked. The elder dragons hissed and whispered among themselves. They did not understand what he was doing, but they watched, unsure whether to attack or stay away. One of them, older and wiser than the rest, finally spoke. "We cannot see this. We have tried everything. Perhaps he knows something." The human's lips pressed together. He knew time was short. The currents inside the mother's body were unstable. Each pulse made her wince, each flicker of light made her tail twitch uncontrollably. He worked faster, connecting crystals, grounding the dangerous energy through the wires, using his own body as a conduit. The hatchling squeaked nervously as it watched him but did not move. The mother's breathing began to even out, just slightly. A faint glow appeared in her scales, soft and steady. The elder dragons leaned in, curious but cautious. They saw the change but they could not understand it. How could a human, with no claws and no fire, reduce the pain of a creature so much stronger than him? The human whispered again, more to himself than to anyone else, "Almost there, hold on, just a little more." He adjusted the final crystal, channeling the energy carefully. It was risky. Too much and he could burn himself. Too little and the currents inside the mother could surge back. But he had learned to trust his own calculations. Humans survived by observing, by thinking ahead, by doing what seemed impossible. The mother lifted her head slightly. Her eyes, still clouded with pain, flicked toward the human. She saw something she had never seen before. Not strength, not fire, not dominance, but care. The human was fragile and small, yet he risked everything for her. The hatchling chirped happily and nudged his mother closer to the human's side as if saying, "He can help you." The elder dragons hissed softly, uncertainty in their voices. They had always known humans to be weak, but here, the human was stronger than any of them in ways they could not measure. He understood what they could not. He saw the invisible, he measured the unknown, and he acted when dragons could only watch. The light in the cavern began to change. The dangerous currents in the mother's body weakened, flowing into the crystal, guided by the human's careful hands. Her breathing steadied further. She moved her wings slightly, stretching weakly but without pain. For the first time in hours, silence fell over the cavern. Even the hum of energy seemed to pause. The dragons looked at the human, at the mother, and at the strange bond forming between them. It was a moment of understanding, though none of them could explain it. The human had done what dragons could not, and they knew deep down that something extraordinary had just happened. The human lowered his hands, exhausted but steady. He looked at the albino mother. Her eyes now held recognition, a flicker of life returning. The hatchling chirped joyfully. The elder dragons whispered softly, some in awe, some in fear, but all understanding that humans were no longer the fragile creatures they had thought. The cavern was no longer just a place of dying light. It was a place where something new had begun. A place where humans could see, understand, and act in ways dragons could not. The albino mother shifted slightly, her massive head lowering to rest on the cold stone floor. Her chest rose and fell more steadily now, but the pain was not gone. The human technician knelt beside her, sweat running down his face, hands trembling from the strain of holding the crystal device in place. Every second counted. Every small mistake could cost the dragon her life, or his. The elder dragons watched from the shadows, uneasy and silent. Some had clawed the stone floor in frustration. Some had flared their wings, ready to strike if needed. But none of them moved closer. They did not understand the human's methods. They had never seen someone survive in ways that dragons could not. They had never seen patience, precision, and courage combined in such a fragile body. The hatchling stayed close, nudging the human's shoulder with his soft snout. It chirped nervously as if asking, "Are you sure you can do this?" The human looked down and smiled faintly, though the smile did not reach his tired eyes. He patted the hatchling gently. "I have to try," he said quietly. "I won't let her die." He had seen the currents of dangerous energy moving through the dragon's body. The pattern was clear now. If he could redirect it slowly, guiding it into the crystal and away from the mother, she might survive. But it was risky. The currents were unstable. One wrong adjustment could send the energy surging back into her chest, burning her from the inside. He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. His hands hovered over the crystal device. He had no claws. He had no fire. He had no scales to protect him from the alien energy. But he had something dragons did not: understanding and the will to act when no one else could. The mother's eyes flickered toward him, large and pale, filled with a mix of pain and trust. The hatchling pressed closer to the human's side, sensing his determination. The human reached out slowly and touched the mother's flank with one hand, careful not to press too hard. She flinched at first, but then relaxed slightly as if letting him help. The elder dragons hissed softly. "This is madness," one growled. "He cannot survive this. He is human. He is weak." "I am not strong like you," the human admitted, his voice calm, steady. "But I can think. I can act. I will not let her die." He adjusted the crystal, realigning it with the invisible currents of energy flowing through the cavern. Sparks of faint light danced along the walls, and the energy in the dragon's body pulsed more evenly. The process was slow. The human could feel the strain in his arms, the heat of the alien energy burning through his skin. His chest ached. His legs trembled. But he refused to stop. The albino mother lifted her head slightly, her eyes never leaving the human. Her breath came easier now, though still uneven. The hatchling chirped softly, pressing its small body closer to the human as if offering support. The human smiled faintly. "We'll get through this," he whispered. "Together." Minutes stretched like hours. The human adjusted the wires, shifted the crystals, and carefully guided the dangerous currents into the crystal device. He could feel the alien energy pushing back, trying to resist. It burned his hands, seared his arms, and made his vision blur. He gritted his teeth and pressed on. The elder dragons shifted uneasily. Some whispered to each other, their voices filled with disbelief. "How can a human endure this?" one asked. "We have fought battles and survived storms that would kill him instantly. Yet he stands unbroken." The human's face was pale, sweat dripping down into his eyes. His hands shook, but he did not stop. He pressed a final adjustment into the crystal, aligning it perfectly with the currents inside the dragon's body. A soft hum filled the cavern, rising and falling like a heartbeat. The albino mother shivered, then relaxed. The energy that had burned inside her chest began to flow more evenly, guided safely into the crystal. She blinked slowly. Her tail twitched gently, her wings lifted slightly. The light in her scales steadied, no longer flickering like a dying star. The hatchling chirped happily and nudged her side. She looked at the human, her massive eyes reflecting gratitude and something deeper, recognition. The human leaned back, exhausted, his body shaking from the effort. His arms trembled, his legs quivered, but he smiled faintly. "It's working," he whispered. "You're going to be okay." The elder dragons were silent, watching in awe. They had always believed that strength was measured by size, by fire, by claws. But here, in the quiet cavern, they saw something they had never understood. The human strength was different. It was patience, courage, and the willingness to act when no one else could. The mother lifted her head higher, looking at the human. She let out a soft, low rumble, not of anger or warning, but of recognition. The hatchling chirped excitedly, nudging his mother closer. The human reached out, placing a gentle hand on the mother's massive jaw. She flinched slightly, then leaned into his touch. The elder dragons hissed softly, uncertainty in their voices. They had always thought humans were weak. They had always thought dragons were the strongest creatures in the galaxy. But now they understood that strength could take many forms. A human could endure, survive, and act in ways dragons could not even imagine. The human's body shook with exhaustion, but he held his position. The currents in the dragon's body were slowing, guided safely into the crystal device. The danger was not completely gone, but it was under control. For the first time, the albino mother seemed to relax fully. Her eyes brightened slightly. Her breathing became steady. The hatchling chirped in relief, flapping his tiny wings. The elder dragons watched silently, still in disbelief. The human had risked everything. He had placed his own life on the line, and in doing so, had saved a creature far stronger and larger than himself. The human whispered softly, more to himself than to anyone else. "You're safe now. You'll live." The albino mother lifted her head fully, looking at him with recognition and trust. The hatchling pressed closer, happy and relieved. The elder dragons, silent and watchful, slowly began to realize that humans were not as weak as they had believed. They had underestimated what courage, intelligence, and determination could achieve. The cavern was quiet now, except for the soft hum of the crystal and the steady breaths of the dragon mother. The human sank back slightly, exhausted but smiling. He had made the choice to act, to risk everything, and it had worked. The dragons could not see what he had seen fully, could not feel what he had felt. But they could see the result. The albino mother was alive. The human was alive. And in that moment, the galaxy seemed to hold its breath, recognizing that courage could come in the smallest and most unexpected forms. The cavern was quieter than it had ever been. Even the hum of the crystal device seemed softer now, like it was holding its own breath. The albino dragon mother lay on the stone floor, her massive chest rising and falling with steady breaths. The dangerous energy that had once burned inside her was weakening, flowing safely into the crystal. Every movement of her scales seemed calmer, every twitch of her claws slower. The human technician sank slightly onto his knees, exhausted, sweat dripping down his face. His hands still hovered near the crystal, ready to adjust anything if needed. His body trembled, not just from fatigue but from the intensity of what he had done. He had risked everything. He had risked his life for a creature far larger, far stronger, and far older than himself. And he had succeeded. The hatchling pressed closer to him, chirping softly. Its tiny wings brushed against the human's arms. It seemed to understand that he had done something incredible. The human smiled faintly, brushing the hatchling's soft scales. "You'll be fine," he whispered. "She's going to be fine." The elder dragons hovered at the edges of the cavern. Their glowing eyes were wide with shock and disbelief. They had watched humans for centuries, dismissing them as weak and fragile. They had believed strength was measured by fire, claws, and wingspan. But here, a human had endured energy that would have killed most dragons. He had acted when they could only watch. He had saved the albino mother. One elder stepped closer, careful, wings spread slightly, tail flicking in hesitation. "Impossible," it murmured. "No human could survive that." The human did not respond. He was too tired to speak. He simply kept his hands near the crystal, letting the energy flow safely, adjusting slowly when needed. The albino mother's eyes met his. Pale and large, they reflected both gratitude and something deeper: understanding. She did not speak, for dragons did not need words. Her look alone carried meaning. She knew he had saved her life. The hatchling chirped excitedly, nudging the mother gently. She shifted slightly, raising her head, the first real movement of life since her suffering had begun. Her wings twitched, spreading slowly as she tested her strength. The crystal device hummed softly, channeling the last traces of dangerous energy away. The elder dragons whispered among themselves, a mix of awe and unease in their voices. "He is human, yet he faced what we could not." "Yes," another replied. "And he survived." For the first time, the dragons realized that strength was not always about power or size. It was about courage, understanding, and the will to act when all seemed lost. The human had risked everything, and in doing so, had shown a kind of strength no dragon had ever seen. The albino mother lifted herself onto her front legs, testing her balance. The human stayed close, ready to adjust the crystal if needed. Her scales glowed faintly in the pale light, shining like ice in the sun. She took a few careful steps, then lowered herself again, chest still rising and falling with steady breaths. The hatchling chirped and nudged his mother's side. She lowered her massive head and let the small dragon nuzzle her gently. The human smiled faintly. "See? She's okay," he whispered. "She's going to be okay." The elder dragon stepped closer, curiosity and respect mixing in their glowing eyes. They had always believed humans were weak, limited, and fragile. But they had never considered this kind of strength. A human could endure pain, risk death, and act with courage even when the odds were against him. He had done something the dragons could not. He had saved a life through determination, intelligence, and care. The albino mother looked at the human fully now, lifting her massive head high. Her eyes reflected recognition, gratitude, and something that dragons rarely showed: trust. She lowered her head slowly, brushing it gently against the human's shoulder. The hatchling chirped happily, hopping onto her back, spreading its small wings with excitement. The human wiped sweat from his forehead, his body trembling with exhaustion, but a small smile crossed his face. "We did it," he whispered. "We made it." The cavern seemed to shift slightly, as if the walls themselves recognized what had happened. The dangerous energy had almost vanished, flowing safely into the crystal. The hum of the device faded to a soft whisper. The light in the albino mother's scales glimmered steadily, no longer flickering in pain. The elder dragons watched silently. They had seen creatures survive storms, battles, and cosmic events. They had seen dragons fight wars that spanned planets. But they had never seen a human risk everything to save a dragon. They had never understood courage in this way. Finally, one elder spoke. "This human, he is different." "Yes," another said quietly. "He is not like the others. He has heart." The human looked up, exhausted, and met their glowing eyes. He did not speak. There was no need. The moment said everything. The albino mother was alive because of him. The hatchling was safe because of him. And the dragons now understood something important. Strength was not only measured in fire or claws, but in courage, intelligence, and the will to act. The albino mother stretched her massive wings slowly, testing her strength. She lowered her head, brushing gently against the human once more. The hatchling chirped, flapping its wings in excitement. The human smiled, leaning back against the stone, finally allowing himself a moment to rest. Outside the cavern, the stars shone brightly. Somewhere in the galaxy, creatures far and wide would never know what had happened here, but it did not matter. What mattered was this: A human had stood against impossible odds, had risked everything and had saved life. The elder dragons remained silent, observing, learning. Their pride was tempered with awe. The human had shown them a new kind of strength, a kind that no dragon had expected to see. A human had acted when dragons could only watch. The cavern was still, except for the soft hum of the crystal, the steady breaths of the albino mother, and the small chirps of the hatchling. The galaxy, if it had eyes to watch, would have held its breath in recognition. The human closed his eyes for a moment, breathing deeply. He had made a choice. He had risked everything. And in doing so, he had changed how dragons, and perhaps the galaxy itself, would see humans forever. The cavern was calm now. The albino mother lay on the stone floor, but her massive body no longer trembled with pain. Her chest rose and fell steadily, the dangerous energy completely guided into the crystal device. The light from her scales glimmered softly, warm and steady, no longer flickering like a dying star. The hatchling chirped happily, brushing against her side. The human technician sat nearby, exhausted, arms resting on his knees. His clothes were damp with sweat, his body trembling from the strain of what he had done. He had risked his life to save a creature far older, far larger, and far stronger than himself. Yet he had survived. He had succeeded. The elder dragons hovered at the edges of the cavern, watching carefully. Their glowing eyes were wide, filled with disbelief and awe. They had lived for centuries. They had faced storms, wars, and cosmic events that humans could not even imagine. But they had never seen courage like this. A human, small and fragile, had risked everything to save one of their own. The albino mother lifted her head, her pale eyes meeting the humans. There was no fear in her gaze. No judgment. Only recognition. She lowered her head slowly, brushing it gently against his shoulder. The human reached out, placing a hand on her massive jaw. The hatchling chirped excitedly and nuzzled both of them. For the first time, the elder dragons spoke in full, their voices low and uncertain. "We underestimated them," one said. "We thought humans were weak." Another elder added, "Yet this one, he has shown a strength that cannot be measured in claws, wings, or fire. He has saved life through courage and understanding." The human looked at them, tired but smiling faintly. He did not feel like a hero. He felt lucky. He had acted because he could not stand by while the albino mother suffered. That simple choice, guided by care and determination, had changed everything. The albino mother shifted slightly, rising onto her legs. She tested her strength, stretching her wings slowly. She lowered herself again, looking at the human with an expression that spoke more than words ever could. She trusted him now. She knew that he had risked everything for her life, and that bond would last longer than any words, longer than any history. The hatchling chirped and flapped its tiny wings, pressing against the human's side. He laughed softly, brushing the hatchling's soft scales. "See? We made it," he said quietly. The elder dragons watched, their pride tempered with awe. They realized that humans had a kind of strength dragons often ignored. It was not in size, speed, or fire. It was in courage, intelligence, and the willingness to act when all else failed. The human had risked his life for another, and in doing so, had shown what dragons had long forgotten, that true strength is also in heart. The albino mother stretched her wings fully, then folded them again, landing carefully on the stone floor. Her massive body gleamed under the pale light of the cavern. She lifted her head toward the human, and the hatchling chirped in excitement, nudging him again. The human smiled, tired but happy. Outside the cavern, the stars shone like diamonds. The galaxy was vast, full of worlds and creatures that would never know what had happened here. But it did not matter. What mattered was that a human had acted when all others had only watched. A human had saved life, and in doing so, had changed the way dragons would remember humans forever. The elder dragons stepped closer, their wings brushing the cavern walls carefully. They circled the human, observing him not with fear or distrust, but with respect. They had underestimated him before, but now they understood. They would remember this day. They would remember the human who had risked everything to save a dragon mother and her hatchling. The albino mother lowered her massive head fully, letting the human touch her scales gently. She rumbled softly, a sound of trust, relief, and recognition. The hatchling chirped excitedly, hopping onto her back. The human laughed softly, brushing the hatchling's wings. He had survived, and the dragon mother had survived. For the first time in centuries, dragons realized that humans were not just small and fragile creatures. They could think, act, and endure in ways dragons could not. Their courage was different, but no less real. The memory of this human and what he had done would live in dragon minds for generations. The albino mother rose fully now, moving slowly but steadily. The human stayed close, helping only when she stumbled. She turned her head toward him and blinked slowly. Her eyes held something dragons rarely gave: respect. The hatchling chirped happily, flapping its wings as if celebrating this new bond. The elder dragons watched silently. Their voices had faded into whispers of awe. They knew that history would remember this moment differently. Humans were no longer just fragile observers in the galaxy. They could act, they could endure, and they could save life when others could not. The cavern felt warmer now, though the air was still cool. The albino mother shifted her weight, stretching fully, then lowered herself gently. The hatchling nestled beside her, chirping softly. The human sat back on his heels, exhausted but smiling faintly. He had made a choice, and that choice had saved life. That choice had changed the galaxy, at least in this corner of it. The elder dragons finally spoke together in low, solemn voices. "We will remember this day," they said. "We will remember the human who stood against impossible odds and saved one of our own." The human looked at them, tired but calm. He did not say anything. There was no need. The dragons had understood. They would carry this memory forever. The albino mother rumbled softly, resting her massive head near the human. The hatchling chirped again, flapping its wings happily. The human brushed the hatchling's soft scales, smiling faintly. He had survived. She had survived. And the dragons had learned something new. In that moment the galaxy seemed to pause. Even the stars outside seemed to shine a little brighter, as if recognizing courage, care, and determination. A small human had shown strength greater than fire or claws. A human had changed how dragons would remember their kind forever. The cavern grew quiet, filled only with the soft hum of the crystal, the steady breaths of the albino mother, and the chirps of the hatchling. The human leaned back, exhausted but calm. He had acted when no one else could. He had risked everything. And in doing so he had left a mark that dragons, and perhaps the galaxy itself, would never forget.